Well, Taiwan has expressed its unwavering commitment to defending its democracy against an increasingly aggressive China. The island's president has warned of what she calls catastrophic consequences for the region should Taiwan fall. Her comments were penned in an essay which was published on Tuesday, coming amid record-breaking incursions by Chinese warplanes into their air defense zone. Also on Tuesday, Taiwan's premier said that over-the-top activity violates regional peace. Professor Dibyesh Anand is the head of Department of Politics and International Relations at the University of Westminster, and he joins us now from London. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So how did we get to China sending in these planes into Taiwan's defense zone, and they would know that it's a provocation?
It is, again, thanks for having me here. We have to understand that what China is doing is what it had said it will do again and again. So we'll only be surprised if we took and assume that China's rhetoric is going to be different from China's practice. So from the very beginning in 1949, when China split and you had the Republic of China in Taiwan and you had People's Republic of China based in Beijing, Beijing has been saying that there can only be one China, right? So not two China. So you can't have Taiwan and China separate. They've said again and again that they're happy and okay to use force if peace does not work, peaceful means does not work, but Taiwan will not be allowed to be separate. So they've been saying that. Now, since Xi Jinping came to power, and of course China's rise as a global power started before Xi Jinping, so it's almost 20 to 30 years. In the beginning, China was generally more quiet. It was using economic means to infiltrate and influence Taiwanese elite and try to make Taiwan more amenable to working with China. So there are a group of people in Taiwan, and one of the opposition party right now is one that wants to have more dialogue with China and work with China. But what China could not figure in and could not control was democratic aspirations. So significant population of Taiwan do not want to be China anymore, Republic of China. They want to be Taiwan on their own, Taiwan independence. So what China faces, of course, is the will of the people of Taiwan, which is generally against joining China. So what in recent years, of course, with Xi Jinping coming to power, the fact that Xi got away with what they're doing in Hong Kong, and we saw with Hong Kong, there was some kind of pro-democracy movement that was crushed, and largely China has been successful. So what they're hoping is what they did with Hong Kong, they're able to do with Taiwan in medium term. It is going to be more difficult, of course, because in practice, Japan, US and others support not official sovereignty of Taiwan. Remember, they do not recognize Taiwan as a separate country, but de facto sovereignty of Taiwan. So that's a complicated picture, but the key factor here is from an ascendant China, so rising China, we are witnessing an we are witnessing an aggressive China, and that's the difference now.
So what has sparked this latest round of tensions? What was the trigger?
In fact, there's no direct trigger. So it's not that Taiwan has been doing anything in particular. If you look at it, in fact, the Taiwan's opposition party recently said that the government was being unnecessarily belligerent, and that party, so KMT, is willing to talk to Beijing. And they were very clear with that. So what Beijing, of course, is doing is, in a way, trying to strengthen the opposition party and demonize the and bully, in fact, the main party, the governing party. That's one. But we have to understand that what China is doing with Taiwan is what is done in Hong Kong. That's what China is also doing vis-a-vis India. So the border dispute with India was heated in the 60s, then it went quiet for a long time. In recent years, of course, China has become very belligerent vis-a-vis India too. So what we find is a general change because of growing nationalism in China, growing assertion power by Xi Jinping as a particular authoritarian leader. Both these factors come together at a time where they see the West as largely divided. So Western bloc is divided, and therefore what they're doing is they're using all mechanisms possible to send a message out to Taiwan and test its patience to say that, look, you better talk to us. If you don't talk to us, this is what we'll do, and no one will come to your aid. And in this, I'll also connect to what happened in Afghanistan. So we saw what US did. US invaded Afghanistan for its interest and then withdrew from it, and then switches between good Taliban, bad Taliban. So what the US has done is it has shown itself to be not very reliable when it comes to ally. So maybe, and this is a maybe the hardliners in China are hoping that Taiwan or people in Taiwan would also see what US does with other countries and therefore no longer rely upon US and somehow accept being bullied and accept the fact that they will have to become part of China one day or the other. But that's not how politics works. We know it, but that's what China hopes.
China is using very strong language with the United States, saying that Washington sending out an extremely wrong and irresponsible signal with provocative actions such as selling arms to Taipei and sending its warships to the Taiwan Strait. So it sounds as if they are pretty much pointing the finger at President Biden.
In fact, look, China's nationalism, in fact, I teach Chinese nationalism. Chinese nationalism is based on the fundamental idea that Chinese people are victims. So it's a perpetual victimhood. And of course, they have been victimized by imperialism. They have been victimized by Japan, no doubt. But it's a sign of perpetual victimization, where victimization is then used to justify everything the assertive China does. So in this case, it's US that's responsible. But the fact of the matter is, US has been doing now what it has been doing for many years. So there's nothing new there. Same vis-a-vis Japan. So vis-a-vis Japan, China has been quite assertive in its dispute over islands. Again, what Japan has been doing is nothing new. So what's new in the region, of course, is China being very confident that it can get away with it. And it can get away with it if it can keep the West divided, but more crucially, Asian countries and other countries divided. And so far, if you look at China's stance in the United Nations over other issues, you do find many developing countries supporting China, even, for instance, on Uyghur issue, many Muslim countries supporting China, even though China has been committing and putting Uyghur Muslims under concentration camps. We have seen African countries, including South Africa, at various points in time, in the name of respecting sensitivity of China, as if a country of 1.3 billion will have one single sensitivity, right? So Chinese government is good at weaponizing it, but in the name of protecting the sensitivity of Chinese government and Chinese state, other countries bend over backwards. And what the Chinese government hopes, of course, is at this point in time that, yes, they will assert against vis-a-vis Taiwan, test the waters, and send a clear message out to the rest of the world that if they do not fall in line vis-a-vis China and Taiwan, there might be a war. And the idea is US would sell arms, but will US or will Japan be willing to go to even half the war vis-a-vis China, or will they ask for some kind of compromise? And what kind of compromise are we talking of? If the compromise is Taiwan has to forever give its idea of independence, we know what we are talking. We are essentially talking, therefore, of Taiwan becoming another Hong Kong vis-a-vis China.
I was just about to ask about Hong Kong, because we've seen over time an escalation in terms of Beijing asserting its authority on the territory. Do you think that Beijing has a fear that the longer issues such as Hong Kong linger and escalate, that Taiwan may become emboldened and that they need to nip this in the bud?
In fact, look, you're right. I mean, to an extent, this is the line that the government uses. They would argue that Tibetans who are demanding, for instance, language rights or cultural rights, which is protected by the constitution, by the way, right? If they're asking if they allow that right to happen, Hong Kong people will ask for more. So you don't allow any rights to Tibet. Fine. Then you say, if Hong Kong people, the rights they ask as some kind of democracy, if you allow that, then Taiwan people will want more. So don't allow that to Hong Kong, so curb everything. So that's the politics of, remember, we're talking of not Chinese government, which is like most other governments. We're talking of party state, right? So China, which is People's Republic of China, is not a state that's independent of the party. So we are essentially talking of an authoritarian party that believes in absolute 100% control over territory and population that it has. Right now, Taiwan, of course, is not under its own control. So they have used economic means to bully it. Now they're using military means to bully it. But third, and mark my words, the fact is China will be willing to use even live fire and arms vis-a-vis Taiwan if they think they can get away with it. Now, if they think they can get away with it, partly depends upon what form of nationalism and nationalist assertion takes place in China. And at this point in time, under Xi Jinping, what we're finding is a very, what I would say, a proto-fascist kind of nationalism, very strong nationalism, one that believes that all 1.3 billion Chinese have to work together to strengthen motherland of China. And to strengthen motherland of China, you need to erase separate identity of Taiwan. And therefore, the logic is that it's the duty of all Chinese people to support the government when Chinese government wants to take back, that's the language they'll use, take back Taiwan. Though historically, the island of Taiwan was not the part of Chinese empire most of the history.
Professor Anand, we're going to have to leave it there, but I think we're probably going to need another conversation to unpack a lot of these issues. They're quite complex, but thank you so much indeed for your insights tonight.
Thank you,